Hello and welcome to the Rask Network. What you're about to hear and see is limited to general financial information only. Please be sure to speak to your financial planner or refer to our financial services guide available at rask.com.au/FSG before acting on the information.
Hello and welcome back to the Australian Finance Podcast. I'm your host, Kate Campbell, and today I'm chatting with wonderful financial advisor Alex Luck from Everest Wealth, who are one of our trusted advice partners at Rask. We're going to chat about property from a financial planning perspective, including how you can create a financial plan to purchase a home. Alex, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Kate. Yeah, good to be here. Pretty excited to get into this topic. I guess it's topical in front of mind for most people. So yeah, I think it should be a good chat.
Now, as a financial advisor, I can imagine you're having conversations about buying a property, selling a property, upgrading a property all the time with your clients. I'd be really interested to hear any high-level thoughts you have about the impact housing, whether it's renting or buying, has on our finances, because it is something that is super topical right now in 2024. Everyone is talking about cost of housing, accessibility, how it impacts their budget. I'd love to hear any thoughts you have on this.
Yeah, absolutely. You've hit the nail on the head there. I think it's always been very, very important to most people in this country to have a house generally of their own. But from a basic need, we all need shelter as well. So whether you're renting or owning a house, it's something which has always been sort of, I guess, front of mind since the dawn of time per se. And in this country, in Australia, there is a lot of importance generally on potentially having your own house within that as well. And I guess, like you said, it's become a lot more, in the media and topical of late due to, I guess, that the sheer cost that it now takes to buy a house in most capital cities now is, a significant multiple of income, which means that, unfortunately, if you don't have a house yet, or you're planning to take it and you're trying to get one as well, which most people are, it does probably take a bit more planning these days and a bit more thought around how you're going to do that. Effectively what sort of impacts that's going to have on other parts of your life as well. And it's definitely not a small amount of money. So as much consideration you can put into it, I think the better as well.
Well, hopefully we can unpack some of those considerations and make it a little bit easier on today's episode. We often talk about seeing a mortgage broker when we're talking about anything to do with property. The common phrase is just go and see a mortgage broker, talk to a mortgage broker, they'll sort it out for you. But why might we also want to talk to a financial advisor when we're thinking about buying a home? Because it doesn't seem super intuitive, and it's not the advice that's given that often from what I can see online.
Yeah, so a financial advisor isn't going to be licensed to be able to tell you to buy what specific property. Okay, so you can't come and see us and we'll be like, buy this house on 1, 2, 3, 4 Fake Street. That's the one to sort of get. But I guess where a financial advisor can be really useful and where we do a lot of work with clients pre-purchase is around, I guess, the cash flow element of it first and foremost. So it's really getting into the numbers in terms of being able to show the clients, okay, if you do purchase this house and then you have a mortgage as a result and you'll have obviously other bills and stuff like that, we can take that into account and show effectively in real life what impact your cash flow is now going to have as a result of this home ownership. So I think that's really powerful. So you can almost sort of like look before you leap as much as possible. Whereas I guess often if you're going to see a mortgage broker, it's going to be around borrowing capacity and then what that repayment for that borrowing is going to be. And then you're sort of left to then figure out, okay, well, is this really going to impact us or not really at all? And that's where I guess, a financial advisor can add that extra value around taking a holistic view as well. So we don't just look at, okay, all we want to do is buy a house and that's it. And maybe the pinnacle of what we're looking to do, in the next year or couple of years, but how is this going to impact other goals that we may have? For example, we don't want to have to buy a house and then we can never take a holiday ever again, as an example. Or we're planning on, getting a house and we want to start a family. Like, what impact is that going to have? Because maybe it's very affordable with 2 incomes, but suddenly it looks drastically different when we go down to 1 or 1.5 as well. And that's sort of, I guess, the modeling that a financial advisor can really do to sort of, delve into, I guess, really I guess, the tiny sort of details to, as much as possible, show you what it's going to look like in real life on the other side of that purchase.
I find sometimes we can get so wrapped up in the excitement and everyone's encouragement with buying a property that we can forget to think about all those other costs that we might need to pay, such as our body corporate strata fees, such as council rates, such as, oh no, we've got a plumbing problem, we have to call an urgent plumber out. And so I think that's also what you're talking about, that value of that more holistic financial planning when it comes to getting a property, because it's more than just the property. There's all these other costs involved.
That's right. And you want to be able to hold on to it, right? Because, it's not a commitment for 12 months. Property, you really shouldn't be purchasing a property without sort of at least a 10-year sort of outlook. So, you're in it for the long term. It's it's a marriage per se between you and this asset. So you want to make sure you've sort of done your due diligence and really thought about it. And as much as possible, been able to sort of delve down into the data to look on the other side of, after I make this purchase, what's life going to look like for us?
If I walk into your office and tell you I'm thinking about buying a property, maybe I'm a few years out, what questions do you start asking me to sort of figure out where I'm at, what my plan might look like?
Yeah, aside from, I guess, the obvious sort of questions in terms of, what are you earning? What sort of savings do you have to begin with? Any other investments? I guess, are mum and dad in any sort of position to help? That's a pretty common question these days. I think it's over 50% of first home buyers are using the bank of mum and dad in some sort of way these days. So that's an important question. But it then comes to, I guess, more practical things in terms of what areas are you potentially thinking about purchasing? So that's generally a pretty good starting point, and the comment we often get back to that is like, where do we want to buy or where do we think we can buy? And I always like to start with, where do you want to buy? Let's start there. And look, it may not be possible for this first purchase, but let's work it back then as well. And that's again where I think a financial advisor can add some value. It's not necessarily about this first purchase, is thinking about how is this going to affect any future purchases that you may want to do. Because look, stereotypically, the first house that people buy isn't going to be the house that they're going to live in forever. So you need to take that into account as well. So things like area, things around, if they're a single person, maybe it's not as applicable, but around, do you think you're going to start a family? Is that something that you think's going to be in your future as well within this house? Or do we need to sort of future-proof it a little bit from that perspective? Along with having a chat around I guess a house versus more of a unit or a villa, and the pros and cons and those sorts of things too.
I imagine sometimes you have to have quite tricky conversations because the dream that someone has in their head is just not quite possible with their current financial situation.
Yeah, look, you'd be surprised. That does happen, definitely. But it actually surprises me. It's probably more the opposite. I think people, particularly in, I guess more the millennial and the Gen Z sort of generations that we typically work with at Everest Wealth, I don't know, maybe they're just because of the media and stuff like that, it's almost slightly the opposite sometimes, where what people think they can sort of achieve is actually 20 or 25% below what they can actually do, funnily enough. It always sort of surprises me too, as part of that.
Well, I guess there is a lot of media saying that young people just are never going to be able to afford to buy a property. And so maybe people are coming to you with very conservative estimates of what might be possible for their life.
That's right. Like literally had a client, it's probably a month ago, 5 weeks ago or so. She's single, living in Melbourne. And look, she wasn't trying to buy, a $2 million house or something like that by herself, but she generally didn't think she was going to be able to buy anything for sort of 5 years. But, working through the numbers with her, looking at some government sort of grants and stuff which were available as well. Like she was going to be able to buy, a 2x1 unit, like an older unit, so not obviously brand new, but she was going to be able to achieve that within the next 12 months, which she was, just completely sort of shocked that she was going to be able to do. And again, doing the cash flow and stuff like that, showing her on the other side, it was going to still be affordable, and she wasn't just going to be eating beans on toast for the next 5 years to try and hold on to the bloody thing.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want to be completely miserable living in this house that you've spent every
Well,
single
there's no
penny
point.
on?
That's what I always say to clients. I'm like, there's no point, getting this and then just being miserable. Like, it's just not going to be sustainable. You're just going to end up selling it. And particularly with property, there's very high, entry and exit costs as well. So it's not something that, again, you want to be going in with a mindset of like, I'm just trying to hold on for dear life. And if it's too hard, I'll just sell it in a year's time, because rarely does that end well.
Are there any sort of green flag signs you look for that indicate someone's really ready to buy a property?
It's a really good question. I think that delves down into the goals a lot of the time. So again, it's talking about like, what do you want to sort of do over the next 5 years? Because if you might be working professional services or something like that. Like, we have a lot of clients that come to us that they might be a lawyer or accountant in their late 20s, and they're thinking of going to work, in the US or London, next year or the year after or something like that. So you need to consider, I guess, as much as possible, these things. Like, plans change obviously all the time. So I don't think there's ever sort of an absolute green flag of like, now you're obviously ready. I think the green flag to begin with is around like, do you have basically the assets behind you to make it financially possible? And then more importantly, financially sustainable post sort of purchasing. But then it is also thinking about these other goals or the other things that you may want to do as well, and making sure that's not going to then directly sort of contradict or conflict with that as well. I.e., say the family conversation, it's, we can really stretch ourselves and get this really wonderful property with the two incomes, but as soon as we get down to 1 or 1.5, it's actually not going to be sustainable. So, and we want to have kids in the next 2 years or something like that too. So we've got to think about those things and make sure we sort of run those cash flows as well.
That's one of the challenge of making these big long-term decisions with property, because there are so many unknowns, especially in your 20s and 30s. You don't know the answers to all those questions, like, do you want to travel and live overseas, or do you want to move interstate, or are you going to start a family? So it can be hard to make long-term decisions when you don't know all of these variables along the way.
Very, very, very hard. And this is probably going to sound a bit contradictory to what I'm sort of saying as well, but like it's all about really, I guess, checking the data at the micro level. But somewhat like I guess a lot of the conversations we have with clients as well is, your adaptability. We're always evolving. We've evolved from a single cell to what we are now and stuff like that. So we're an adaptable race, and that goes somewhat as well into. Once you do get this house, like the first sort of 3 months, it's always like, your eyes are pretty wide. You're like, wow, this is a pretty big step. But you do, eventually adapt to it and get used to it and move on. And I think a lot of people, like you said as well, like it's very hard to, you may have these plans for the next 2 to 5 years, and things change all the time. But people often don't factor in that they're probably going to get a pay rise as well, right? Which then that's going to make it easier again. So you want to plan as much as you can, but at the same time too, you do kind of have to. It is still a leap of faith at the end of the day, but most people 9 times out of 10 land on their feet once they get into it and get used to it.
If we get into a bit more detail here on the financial plan and what you walk people through, what are some of the key aspects that you would help people plan when they're thinking about buying a property and they're wanting to come up with that plan? You mentioned sort of cash flow and things like that before.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really, I guess it's very simple, but then it can become sort of, somewhat quite complex as well. But effectively it's, okay, what's your incomes, to begin with? How much tax are we paying on that? We always do normally a 12-month sweep of your previous transactions. So we can get a really good idea of sort of naturally how much money comes in and how much money goes out. The clients sometimes provide us their own budget, but rarely do we use it, to be honest, because normally when we get into it, they're normally very detailed, but not quite as detailed as, again, just taking the raw data. There's no judgment or anything like that, but you can really then truly say, what people spend. And I always say to clients, there's no point hiding from it as well, because that is naturally kind of what you're going to do. And we can do some things to sort of change that to a degree, but you are always going to revert back to somewhere near that mean, right? Just like the comment on, there's no point stretching ourselves so far to get this house and then 3 months in we're basically miserable. So taking those transactions, working through that with clients in terms of sort of any areas where maybe we can sort of shave some savings as part of that. And then looking at I guess, not just the house purchase goal, but other goals as well. So most people, for example, are generally going to want to take some form of holiday, most years, whether it's, domestic or international or whatever sort of important to them. So making sure we're setting aside, a set amount of money to account for that each year, and, making sure that's not going to be too impacted as part of this house purchase. Along with, again, depending on the area that they're looking to buy in, estimating as best as possible what the council rates are going to be, water rates as part of that. Generally adding an additional buffer just for general maintenance as well, which, again, depending on the age of the properties that they may be looking at, we might set at 5 or 10 grand as an example, as again, sort of an additional sort of buffer as part of that. And then, other things like, because often people do know, like, next year I'm going to get the pay rise of X. So, okay, we can then cash flow that in as well. Just show, okay, look at the, the difference that's made. Along with, again, sort of, more longer term goals, people still want to normally continue investing in some sort of way. So is that going to be sustainable with the house? And how much are we going to have to trim that down? Or are we not going to have to trim that down as well too? So it's sort of feeling that all out. And then, again, it comes back to what areas are you looking at? What's the median price in those areas? Is it, say, $1 million? Showing that then with the actual data and all their own numbers. And then, so more often than not, people see it and they go, okay, that actually does look relatively sustainable. Or again, occasionally, but more rarely, they look at that and go, yeah, there's no way I can afford that. So in which case, we've got to then, move down to, okay, maybe we're not going to go all out for the ideal, our favorite first choice suburb. Let's move to the one next door first and see how that's going to look too.
You mentioned something that I think is really important, which is having a bit of a buffer in there, whether it's like $5,000 or $10,000, having that emergency fund put aside for the property. Because Owen and I recently did an episode about just the cost of housing in terms of just owning a house and all the things that popped up. And we asked our community what they had to say. And people had expenses for getting a snake removed. There was termites. There was sudden roof leaks requiring a whole roof to be redone. There was holes in the driveway. It was just crazy, the possible expenses that a house could produce for you.
That's right. So we set it in two ways. So we have your emergency fund first and foremost, which is just a lump sum of cash depending on normally whatever you're comfortable with. So we have clients that might have $5,000. We have clients that have $250,000. Like it's really, people are often like, should it just be 3 months of living expenses? I think that's like maybe a good rule of thumb to begin with. But my answer is always it's whatever you're comfortable with. So like Kate, you would have a different number to me, right? Or we may have a similar number, but it's never going to be exactly the same. So it's what I say, it's whatever number passes the sleep test. So whatever makes you feel comfortable at night, knowing you've got X in the bank account, that if the roof falls down or the family member's sick interstate, you have to jump on a flight, you've got that cash just always sort of sitting there. So that's very, very important and fundamental before any form of purchase or any form of investment for starters as part of that. But then, as part of that cash flow modeling, we also set up because we use normally like a bit of a bucket system with our cash flow, our cash flow plans in terms of, I guess, what we implement with clients. And generally we recommend what I would call like a home maintenance account, which is, for things like that, getting a snake removed or you need to replace the tap on the bathroom, which is only $100 or something like that from Bunnings. But these things will continually sort of crop up. And so having a set aside of money sort of every fortnight a month into an account like that can make sure that when these unexpected things do pop up, it's nothing. You've already got the money there to go. And it can also double as a bit of what I call like a minor renovation account as well. So you want to repaint the kitchen cabinets. Okay, well, we've got $6,500, which is built up in this account. Let's spend $500 on paint, and we can do that too, because you will want to do those things over time as well.
Yeah, and having that, whether it's a renovation fund or just general house maintenance bucket as part of your budget, is important, because you don't often know these expenses are going to pop up in advance, that your shower tap's going to fall off, speaking from personal experience, or your dishwasher will stop working. And so it's hard to plan for those specific expenses in your budget. But if you have a general, okay, well, every year there's going to be something I'm going to have to spend money on. Most people said they have to get a tradie at least 2 times a year. So with that in mind, putting that money aside each month in that general purpose house fund.
Yeah, and that's where it's probably like, again, it's that blend between getting like as specific as possible, but also like there's so many unknowns. Like I said, there's no way you're going to be able to predict that, on the 6th of June next year, a snake's going to enter my yard. So therefore I'm going to have to get the ranger out to remove. Like that's just impossible. But unfortunately, as part of home ownership or just life in general, right, stuff happens which we don't see coming. So if we get into the habit of putting a set aside, a regular amount of money, we've always got, at least some form of buffer that, normally it can cover the majority of it generally. But even if it can't, it can still lessen that blow significantly. And then you've got that set emergency fund as the double backup in that example as well.
How should we be thinking about insurances as part of our plan in buying a property?
Yeah, really, really important. So yeah, obviously with property, you've got your own insurances that you need, like obviously home insurance, contents insurance. If it's an investment property, you might have landlord insurance as well as part of these sorts of things. But then you also need to look at making sure yourself, you personally are insured correctly as well. So what I'm talking about here is life insurance, total and permanent disability or TPD, and then your income protection. Because at the end of the day, most times you've signed up to a 30-year mortgage, so you need to service that, and normally you'll have to service that through your own employment income. Okay, most people in their 20s and 30s and 40s don't unfortunately have an investment portfolio large enough that they are generating enough passive income to service a mortgage. Some people possibly are. Yeah, but for the common man and woman, not necessarily the case. So that's where it's important to and look. Ideally, which doesn't happen this way in practice, but the theory really suggests you should get that sorted before you make the purchase, right? Most people make the purchase and then it triggers like, oh, I really should make sure my my income's covered, or I've got life insurance if I bought this place with a partner, and if one of us suddenly isn't here, the partner may struggle to service the mortgage by themselves. So yeah, those are very important things to make sure you have sorted, and I would encourage as part of the purchasing process that gets completed as well, because ideally that's in place, before that purchase is made, just in case you're unlucky enough that something happens on day one or something like that, which it's unlikely, but it's definitely something that needs to be considered for sure.
And we've got an insurance mini-series on the podcast that I'll link in the show notes if anyone wants to learn a bit more about insurance, which, while not the most exciting topic to talk about, is a very important one to get right.
That's right. And with that, I'll just add finally, like a lot of these can often be funded via your super fund as well. So they don't necessarily affect your cash flow, which generally, if you are purchasing a property, your cash flow is going to take a hit in some form. So at least you can still be covered. And it's not necessarily having to come out of your own, still your money, right? Because it's still coming from your super fund. To be clear, it's not free, but it's not coming out of your own personal cash flow, which is often a decent way to structure it at this point in time when you are making that first purchase as well.
Are there any government incentives or strategies that you like to bring up with home buyers?
Look, there's a lot, and I'll probably get some of these names wrong as well because there's a few. So there's a couple federal ones, and then there's state ones as well, and they are somewhat confusing. People often confuse them too. So every state will have, if you buy under a certain amount, okay, you'll get you'll be completely exempt from stamp duty, okay, so you won't pay any stamp duty on that purchase, or you pay a limited rate. So for example, in WA, if you buy under $600,000, you will still pay some stamp duty. If you buy under $450,000, you'll pay none, and between $450,000 and $600,000, you'll pay a partial amount. But once you go above $600,000, you'll pay the full stamp duty rate. Now, ironically, most of these levels that are set in each state are well below generally what you'll probably need to spend to get something decent, depending on, again, your budget and your area and stuff like that. I think in New South Wales, it's $800,000, I think, is where it caps out as an example. But the median house price is almost 1.4 mil. So it's a bit of a disparity there. So look, if you can get under that and you're happy with the area, and look, maybe you are looking at a more of a villa or apartment or a unit to begin with, then that's something which can be just a way that you don't have to just spend an extra 20 grand on stamp duty. There's other things as well. So the first home buyer guarantee, I think it's called. Basically, what this is if you meet a certain income test, okay, so you're under a certain income level, which is pretty generous, by the way. I think it sits around 120,000 or something like that. So if you sort of sit below that, and you're buying under a certain asset value again, which I think is 750 off the top of my head, you only have to come up with a 5% deposit for the property. Okay, which then the government then guarantees the remaining sort of 15% on your behalf. So what this means, bit of jargon here, is you don't have to pay what's called lender's mortgage insurance. So generally, whenever you most people would have heard of like you need to have a deposit of 20%. The reason where that magical number comes from is the bank is effectively comfortable that if you front up a 20% deposit, they'll loan you the remaining 80%, and they're comfortable that property prices aren't going to sort of fall by more than that value, so they're not too worried there. But if you've got a deposit which is less than 20%, the bank will then ask you to take out what's called lender's mortgage insurance, which doesn't protect you, it protects the bank. Now, there's no upfront cost of this, it just gets added to the loan, okay? But if you can imagine over 30 years, it does kind of add up in terms of what you'll have to pay for that. And it will vary depending on how much deposit you have or not. But again, for these first home buyers, if you're looking to sort of if you're under that income threshold and under that asset threshold, you can still just have a 5% deposit, but you don't have to pay the lender's mortgage insurance. So that can be, I think, really attractive and really handy as well. And that's a federal scheme. So talk to your mortgage broker; they'll be all over that one. And the final one, the one that we work with a lot, is what's called the First Home Super Saver Scheme, which is starting to get a bit more airtime, I think, these days, which is good. Get a little bit more knowledge around it. It's been around for a while as well, so it's not brand new or anything like that. It just hasn't been used, I guess, a lot when it first sort of came out 4 or 5 years ago now. What this basically is if you put extra money into your super fund. So by extra money, I mean you would either salary sacrifice it through your employer, or you would make what's called a personal concessional contribution. So you'd put a lump sum into your super during the financial year and then claim a tax deduction for that. You can then effectively re-access that money if that money is going towards the deposit of your first home. All right. So you can do $15,000 each financial year up to a total of 50 grand. So you could do 15, 15, 15, 5, and you can do the full 50 grand. So I guess working with clients, most people don't hit the 50 because that takes 4 years, all right? But they might do 30, 2 years of 15. That happens quite a bit. So why would you do this, right? Why is this guy rambling about whatever this thing is, okay? The advantage of it is by putting that money into your super fund, you only pay the super fund tax rate of 15%. Okay, which is a much lower tax rate than what most people will pay as their marginal rate of tax, which is effectively the tax they pay on income that they receive from their employee work, right, which is generally going to be in the 30s. Okay, so you get to save that difference, and what that effectively allows is you can build your deposit faster. Okay, because instead of paying the full rate of tax on that $15,000, you only now pay it at 15%, which for the average kind of income earner is worth approximately around kind of $3,000 a pop as part of that. So if you think about if you did it up to the full 50, you can potentially save around sort of 10 grand extra, which means that you can just boost your deposit a lot quicker. So money goes in. I do encourage everyone to do their own reading on this. They are making the system a bit more simplified now as well in terms of how you sort of do it. My brother-in-law did it the other day, though. It is pretty easy to do. It's all done on the MyGov app as well. But effectively, money goes in, you then pull it back out, and then you've effectively got 12 months to purchase a house once you've received that money back.
I've seen a few calculators pop up on different financial websites like super funds online that show you the difference using this scheme would make. So that could be interesting to play around with as well.
Yeah, definitely. And look, the more money you're making, the more beneficial it will be, particularly if you are sort of on those upper sort of tax brackets as well, because the difference between that and 15 is greater. So a cool thing to note as well is you don't have to wait for the full financial year to finish. So what I mean by that is, say, you've come to me in May and you look, Alex, December, I really want to make sure, or say by the end of the calendar year, I really want to make sure I've purchased a house. Like I'm I'm pretty close in terms of my deposit for the area that I want to do, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, great, awesome. What we can do then is potentially take some of your existing deposit money in June of this year, dump $15,000 in, you get the tax deduction as a result of that. And then in July, we could take some of the existing funds, another $15,000 and put it in as well. Okay, so now we've put we've put 30 in over those two financial years, but you're able to then still pull that back out now. You don't have to wait until the end of that financial year to pull it out. All right. Now you don't get the personal tax benefit until the end of the tax year. Okay. So, but again, provided that's not going to affect the deposit amount that we necessarily need to get into that purchase, that's a really, great, sort of benefit that you can, again, you just save an extra $3,000 in tax roughly by doing that. So it's pretty flexible from that perspective as well. And that's a way that we have used it quite often as part of that too. And the only criteria, so a lot of people are like, is there a purchase limit or anything like that? The answer is no. With the First Home Super Saver Scheme, it can be any purchase amount. It just has to be your first house and you have to live in it for 6 months within the first 12 months. That's effectively the only criteria. Other thing to note there as well is different to a lot of the other schemes is if you and I are buying a house together, Kate, and you've already got one and I don't, okay, I can still do it even if we're buying it together. All right. Whereas for a state concession, okay, that would be a no-go. If you'd already had a house before and we were buying under those thresholds for the stamp duty concession, I wouldn't get that because I'd be buying with you who's already got a house. So that's quite a handy thing as well to sort of note with that. And where it sort of differs from, I guess, a lot of the other schemes, because as I guess I said at the start of this long rant that I've given everybody, there's a lot of schemes moving around and stuff like that too.
Yeah, I think that one's good to know because a lot more people are entering relationships further on in their life, potentially with an asset already. They might already have a little unit and the other person in the relationship might not have a property yet. And so you can take advantage of this, whereas sometimes you're not eligible for some of the others if you're in a de facto relationship. Alex, one of the things I was wondering is we often get the question of should I wait to purchase with a partner or should I just do it on my own? Do you get any clients in that situation?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, again, a lot of it comes down to your own personal goals and where you're at, potentially within that relationship or where you're at in terms of your career or your stage of life and stuff like that as well. The added benefit of obviously buying with someone else is, there is generally, you are going to be able to unlock, in theory, a better asset because maybe, what you could purchase by yourself was 600,000, but with a partner, it's up to sort of 1.2 mil. So you take the Sydney example, 600,000 is going to buy you nothing, half a room, maybe a car park, half a car park or something like that. Whereas, 1.2, it should in theory have a roof and a couple of rooms, which is going to be a lot more, valuable. And again, just a better asset. And potentially there it's an asset which is in a better area. So in theory, it might get better growth over the long term too. So it's definitely worth considering. But it's not, I guess, the be all or and end all either. Because even purchasing at that 600 level, you're getting money into the market, which is going to compound over time. And again, provided you've done some due diligence that the area you think will be up and coming and stuff like that, then there's nothing wrong with that either. And so again, say you've done that and then a couple of years later you then want to purchase with your partner, the existing asset, if it has a borrowing attached to it, is going to have some impact. But remember, it can be rented out. So the banks will consider that as well. Now, they won't consider normally the full 100% of the rental income, but they'll normally consider it, depending on the lender, say 80%. So it's actually it doesn't impact your borrowing capacity as much as people often think as well. That's quite a common thing we get. They're like, well, if I purchase this, I won't be able to get anything else. That's not really the case, and I would encourage people to speak to a financial advisor or a mortgage broker if they have a concern around that as well. Because it's not really true.
Can you talk a little bit more about borrowing capacity? Because sometimes people go in with the idea that you should borrow as much as you can. Is that a terrible idea, or is there some truth to that saying?
Yeah. Look, again. It's not quite as black and white as that. The advantage of property over other assets is the ability to leverage. all right, which people may have heard before. So effectively, you put in 100 grand, but the asset is worth 600. So then the bank gives you another 500,000. So instead of having that, say, 100,000 compounding at 10% over the long term, you've actually got, $600,000 compounding at 10% over the long term. Obviously less interest costs, but you're still going to be better off, right? Because the interest is not going to be 10%. Okay. So if you're able to, so again, it probably comes back to what we were talking about at the top of the show around those cash flows and stuff like that. So that's really where that extra due diligence goes a long way to be like, okay, if I do borrow at my max, what impact is that going to have on other goals that I may have or other parts of lifestyle? But if you do run the numbers and you see that, it's not going to impact it in a way that is meaningful to you. So it's okay, well, I'm not going to go on an overseas holiday for the next couple of years. That's fine. I'll just do domestic stuff. I've done an overseas trip before. I'm happy, as a hypothetical example. Then yeah, the max may make some more sense because what we were saying before about, borrowing with a partner, that in theory should unlock a better asset for you, which may then outperform, more of an inferior asset in a worse area. As part of that. As a rule of thumb, and again, speak to your mortgage broker, but you can normally borrow about 4.5 times your income. So that's a good sort of rule of thumb there. And ACRA, which governs lending effectively in this country, what they do is they have a 3% buffer rule. Okay, so basically 3. So when you're borrowing at say 6%, they're actually the banks have to assess your ability to borrow at 9%. So whilst it is say your max, it's not your max because they're actually assessing you against 9% in terms of your ability to afford it, as opposed to actually 6. So they do their own internal buffers within that as well, and that's just to protect people from that maybe go to the casino and they just they chuck it all on red and sort of see what happens. That's that. So there is that automatic, I guess, guardrail whether you like it or not too within that.
Now, if I've gone through the planning process with you and it's been a few years and I've saved my deposit and I'm ready to talk to a mortgage broker, what questions would you tell me to ask the mortgage broker?
Yeah. So that is a really good question. The main things that we often sort of talk about when our clients are then going to go and see the broker, because all brokers are going to be able to calculate your borrowing capacity, and most brokers are going to have access to sort of 40 plus lenders and stuff like that. So that should be pretty sort of bog standard. It's more probably talking about with the particular lender that you're going with, what's, I guess, the difference between, say, a fixed rate versus a variable rate? How does that sort of work? Am I going to do a bit of a split over that? But the main thing we often talk about is, again, depending on that cash flow structure that we set up with the clients in terms of how they want to implement it, because they may want to have, say, 4 or 5 accounts in terms of how they're going to run their money going forward. And that's where potentially like a multiple offset lender can become quite attractive and useful. Again, it really depends on how much cash you're going to have sort of set aside and stuff like that. But before we're doing the purchase, hypothetically, we might have 30 grand in an emergency fund and other sort of buffers of cash as well, which often then can more than offset the cost of having an offset package, because most banks will often charge around $300 to $400 as an annual fee to have that. And all banks will have an offset account, but a lot of banks only have one. All right. And that's where it becomes messy, I think, or harder to sort of track. Because if you've just got 80 grand lumped in one account, but then you've got to remember 40 grand of that was from our emergency fund and 20 grand is what we set aside for our wedding. And then we've got that holiday coming up, which is 5 grand, and the home maintenance is in there, which is 6.5. And you've got to run this really confusing spreadsheet to try and work back every time when you look at this big number, how much is actually yours to potentially spend on something fun. That's where lenders which allow multiple offsets, you can then break that up right across 4 or 5 accounts, and then it's very easy to log in whenever you want, and you can name the accounts a lot of the time and go, oh great, look, hey, we've got 11 grand's built up into our holiday account. That's booked that trip overseas now. We're sort of good to go. So that's probably more what I encourage people to talk about is like, the benefits or the nuances of specific lenders. It's not always about just give me the absolute best rate that you possibly can. That is definitely important and needs to be considered. But these are some, I guess, more practical things with the actual lender you're going with. Because so in our experience, people that have maybe purchased something before, they come and see us and they've been lumped with a lender which only has one offset, and often they'll bring it up. They're like, yeah, it's really frustrating, or like the their internet banking's terrible, and like I can't use this system. Like it has to be usable. So interest rate is definitely important in terms of getting it as low as you can, but usability, which again comes back to that, I guess, sustainability piece. You don't want it to be a chore as well. You want it to be as seamless as possible too.
Alex, I've covered a lot today, from talking about the First Home Super Saver scheme to understanding your cash flow and if you're in a financial position to purchase a property and what it could look like having that conversation about buying a house with a financial advisor. What would you say the number one thing listeners need to take away from this conversation if they're thinking about purchasing a property in the near future is?
I honestly think the number one thing we can sum it up is effectively the sooner the better, right? So maybe you've got a bit anxiety around like, I just don't think I have enough or something like that. And look, that may be the case, but you don't know what you don't know. And I'll reference that client that we had a couple of weeks ago in that, she generally didn't think that she was going to be able to buy for 5 years. And she had a few other things that she wanted to do that we helped her with as well, as I guess as part of that holistic approach. But she was generally sort of gobsmacked that, I can actually do this within 12 months. And, it fit the bill in terms of what she wanted. The repayments were largely going to be what she was paying in rent anyway, and now she's got an asset. But without her sort of, I guess, taking that initiative to, I'll just go see where I'm at, she would have never known that, and she might have then sat on the sidelines for another 5 years, not had an asset compounding with her, which is now going to grow over time and ultimately, build her wealth and a better financial future for herself.
A fantastic place to end. If anyone wants to get in touch with a financial advisor like Alex to chat about property or insurance or anything else, check out the link in your podcast player. And I'll also include some links in the show notes to some of the previous chats we've had with Alex about insurance, superannuation. We've probably covered a lot of other topics in the fun world of finance. So Alex, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, it's been really good fun.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks for watching this video on the Rask Network. While you're here, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can get videos each and every day on business, finance, investing, and so much more.